You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, people-centric leaders, welcome to your weekly dose of business therapy here at the People Centric Podcast, right? We get this a lot. People come to us and say, thank you for being like my therapist. I've heard people, even when they listen to the podcast, of saying, you're like my business therapist. Diana, you look super uncomfortable right now. I'm just going to call you out. You look really uncomfortable as I'm saying this.
Yeah,
Why are you so uncomfortable?
I feel like I need a disclaimer. We are not therapists. We are not psychologists. We are not professionals in mental health space at all. We're coaches.
We're coaches. But I mean, how many times a week do you hear somebody say, thank you, you're kind of like my therapist. You're kind of giving me therapy, business therapy.
Just this morning, someone called and was like, I had to call you because I'm just so mad and I need talked off the ledge. And I do that with my therapist, I have to call you because I'm just dealing with this thing that I need to talk through.
I'm dealing with Don and he is out of control again.
Again.
Or you just say D as a code name. It's like, I'm dealing with D. D's doing it again. D's doing this
D's
again.
being a real A.
That's perfect. That's great. Philip, you've heard this before. I know you've heard this before. Like Philip's, I've heard people say that to you, like our clients and people that we work with. Philip's kind of like my therapist.
It's true. And gosh darn it, you broke our special secret passcode. When we talk about D around here, it is you. You really, dang it. We got to find a new code, Diana. It's
New
not
code.
D anymore. Yeah, it is. I think we get that a lot in coaching, and even if a few group sessions, I think that's my favorite time when it comes out, when the whole group all at one time is like, wow, yeah, you guys are like our group therapist, right? And I think that basically what I hear them say is we can help them have meaningful, great, robust conversations and really get to the things that matter and not the political, confusing fluff that I think sometimes clogs our minds in the business world.
Yeah, that's well said. So we thought we would do a whole episode on therapy, like not just what therapy is, because we are not therapists, as Diana said. We're not licensed therapists. We're not unlicensed therapists. We're not therapists. We're business consultants. Like we work with people, but people say they come back and they say a lot of times, like, you're kind of like my therapist a little bit. Like you kind of help me with things a little bit. And I need a therapist at work. So we're going to talk a little bit about like, what is therapy? What does that mean? Is that a thing? Do people need it? And why do people talk about it at work? Why is it that we are seeing this trend where people at work feel like they need a work therapist? What does that look like? And then can we provide some of that need without being a therapist? Could you provide that for your coworkers? What are you looking for and what do you need that's around this therapy? So we're going to attack this topic from a bunch of different ways. Where should we start? How about we start by like what is therapy? Like if we talk about therapy, what is therapy? What does that look like?
Well, as a longtime user of therapy, I think there's a lot of different types. And so when you talk about therapy, we are talking about talk therapy, cognitive talk therapy. We're not talking about like medications and that sort of stuff. Those are definitely things that can be introduced during mental health evaluations. But we're specifically talking about when you sit down with someone and talk through what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you use the word cognitive, which is a special word, and it means cognitive means like you have your own understanding of something, right? So there's the TV show on Apple TV. Boy, I'm endorsing a product again. Second week in a row, I'm endorsing a free product. We should have gotten some money from Apple. Apple, send us stuff. Send us free stuff, Apple. Send us free stuff. I've owned multiple iPhones, multiple of them. So send us free stuff. And they work most of the time, so that's pretty good. Okay, they're probably not gonna send this stuff anymore. But anyways, cognitive, there's a show on Apple called Shrinking, I think is the name of it. Shrinking, right? And it has a therapist who's been through some horrible things in his life, and he's a therapist, and he's sitting there listening to all these people's problems. And he wants to just jump in and start telling him the answers. And I think anybody who's been through therapy, myself included, I also am a user of therapy. I think we should normalize that. By the way, I think everybody should have a therapist and work through a therapist as part of your mental health. That's a natural thing. But a therapist doesn't just sit down and listen to you and tell you what's wrong with you. That would be nice. And that's the theme of the movie Shrink or the TV show Shrinking, is he kind of just says, "What if I just told you to stop doing that? You're in a bad relationship. You should dump that boyfriend. Get over this. Start getting out more. Do this stuff. Like, what if I just told people to do this?" But the word cognitive is this idea of like you have to help talk through something with somebody else so they discover what they need to discover so that they understand more about what they're doing, because that creates ownership and real change. If I tell you something is wrong with you, that doesn't change you. That's just in my opinion, and then you can resist that change. Where, as we often talk about, if I'm walking next to you and I'm asking you questions and I get you to discover something about yourself, then that's really, really helpful. That's helpful. So in our world, like where does that happen in our world? Like where does that intersect that maybe confuses people for our world? Do either of you have a good example of that in terms of like how we work with clients?
I think the example that I had this morning of someone calling me and just saying, like, I'm really mad, I need to talk through something. There's there's a way that I could have handled that as a consultant. I could have said, okay, well, you're mad. Here's what you need to do, and just told them what to do. Um, but instead, I took a minute. I validated their feelings. I said, like, I totally get why you're mad. I would be frustrated in this situation too. And then I started asking questions like, why do you think this upset you so much? This is a very high reaction to something as simple as this. What is it about this thing, or is there something else behind it? Right. So I dug a little deeper and I asked some questions. And ultimately, she came to her own conclusions about A, why she was so mad, and B, what she was going to do next. And I didn't tell her what to do. I just asked really good questions to get her to do it herself. And that's a lot of what a therapist does, right? If I had just said, "Hey girl, you're mad. Go have this conversation, go talk to this person and go yell at these three people." Like she would have done it, but it wouldn't have fixed the underlying emotion, and it wouldn't have fixed any of the relationships, and it would not have made the situation better.
I was going to add to that. It's like the difference, I think, between someone, prescribing a note, like, here's the prescription, take this, as opposed to being like, hey, come back into the lab. This is how people work. What kind of recipe are you wanting to cook up in here? And not that we're teaching people how to actually make drugs and prescriptions, right? But it's like, how do you want to create this thing that you're looking for? It's not a pill. It's not one solution. It's an approach. And a good friend of mine, he actually is a renowned researcher based here in Missouri, in the person centered approach, which is designed like one therapist to the one-on-one level. And it's what he studies. And I love it because, it's very close to our brand and our name, but it actually is a lot of our people centric philosophy marries up to what Jeff and his wife Yasko, both doctors in counseling and philosophy and psychology, study. And it's basically just that, like, lean in on the person. One of their big things is to talk about acceptance. And I think we talk about worthiness or your place here. I don't have to say you're right or wrong, but I really want to just like welcome you to this place. Like Diana said, like I don't need to say anything beyond like, okay, well, what do you want to do next? And what do you need to do to get there with your team member, with your goals? And I think that feels like therapy, but it's a lot of emotional intelligence and just being a person with a person.
Yeah, and it strikes me like as a leader within a company or as a coworker within a company or an organization, like what do you get from other people that you work with and how do you offer that? And it really strikes me like Diana, especially in your story, like when we go to work with a client, like a lot of people probably listening to this, and if you haven't worked with us, you're like they called you because they were upset, they were mad. Like, is that what you do? Like, is that the service you offer? And so like when we sell and we talk about what are we going to be able to offer for you, we don't say like, okay, here's what we do. When you're upset, you just call us and we will talk you down. That's what we do. Like that's not part of the service. Like what we talk about is like we're going to coach you and walk along with you and work to make changes inside the organization. We're not selling job descriptions. We're not selling onboarding processes. We're selling change. We're selling systems that help make change for people. What is it that makes like my question is like how did you get the other person to want to call you in a vulnerable moment and trust you to reach out? How do you build that trust with somebody where they would come to you and share a problem with you? Which is something I think would be interesting for any manager to hear, or anybody who wants to be a good coworker?
I love that question. I think both for a person who goes to therapy, why we get confused, or the people that work with us, someone has to acknowledge that things may not be terrible. Your life may not feel like a total wreck. Your company might be having amazing success, but you see, there are things we want to do differently and habits you want to build that are healthier. To your point, Don, like as leaders and followers, and our team can grow and excel our standard of team even more. So that first step is knowing like there's things out there that I can do better or that I don't know that can help. And so the reason that they end up calling us is first they've reached out to us to build a relationship to begin with, saying, hey, I see this value that there's an impact you can make in the change management and people working in the gap where people and organizations have a need. And then second, I think you do some small wins with together and you build that trust, so they can see that change. And I think one of the things people just need so much, which again is why they sometimes mistake us for therapists, or just they can be very unfiltered with us. You know, maybe you don't go to your boss and say exactly what you're thinking, your direct impulse in wanting to say it, which is probably a smart thing not to do. But you're able to come and talk to us, and you can, I think, get a neutral perspective in a sense. Having us outside of it, we can know your team and organization, so we know the characters, but we can ask questions differently, and we're not going to take it personally. And so there's something about that outside help that's both, I think, reassuring. And then if we also can help push them back, we don't always just sit and listen, right? We're not just here to play games. We might ask some challenging questions back and ask you, where are you wrong? What are you missing? And I think people really respond well to that too. And I think specifically leaders, they often say, man, it's lonely at the top and it can feel like you're living in a silo or you're living a story that might not be true and you're not really sure. And so there's like this, I think, a release that comes from gut checking that just so honestly. And we see people have breakthroughs when they talk with us because they realize, I've never actually said that out loud, but that's what I think. Or I didn't even know I was thinking this until this conversation with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that we know, People Centric knows that business is personal, right? And there's this like, I don't know, very big push out there that's like, it's not personal, it's just business, right? Everyone's heard that a million times.
From The
And
Godfather. Yeah.
you what?
From The Godfather. Yeah.
From The Godfather. It's also from like Michael Jackson. He said it to the Beatles when he took all of their music rights. It's not business. It's not personal. It's just business, right? And and I think that when you spend 40 hours a week minimum with a job and you are making change and you're putting your brain into things and you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into things, it is absolutely personal. So I think we have this philosophy of like, no, we understand that your emotions are valid emotions when you're at work and it's okay to have those. And if you don't want to show those because in your environment you want to project a certain view, but you want to show those to somebody and you want to be like, I am really mad. How do I work through it? We are absolutely that safe space to do that, to say, it is personal. I get why you're mad. I get why you're upset. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. So it strikes me, I mean, we use the word help a lot. And it strikes me, we know enough working inside workplaces and organizations that there are helpful relationships and there are unhelpful relationships. There are people who we work with as clients who will say, well, I'm going to go to that person and get some advice. Or there's people, I mean, there's people in my family who I'll watch and say like, I'm going to go to that person for advice. And I'm like, oh, if I would take advice from that person or do, so maybe what is helpful or not helpful if someone's coming to you with a problem? Like let's just go to that, like from a real basic level. What's helpful or not helpful?
I don't know if I have an immediate answer to that, but I do have like a scenario. So you talked about one of the reasons you left Facebook is because people will put something out on Facebook like, oh, my boss is a jerk or my kid sucks or whatever it is, right? They put something out there. And then all of these people start to validate that. And they're like, yeah, that is crappy. Yeah, that person does suck. Yeah, you have been wronged, when they didn't stop to say, well, what's the other side of the coin here? There's also a really famous radio show called Dr. Laura from back in the day. And this woman called in and said, my husband cheated on me. He's so awful. He's so terrible. And Dr. Laura said, well, what did you do to make him cheat on you? And people were like aghast, right? Like they were like, what are you talking about? He cheated on me. And she said, I'm not on the phone with him. I'm on the phone with you. And I think it goes back to that, like, you have to be able to see all the sides and all the angles. So if someone is like only validating you, that's not helpful. That actually hurts you.
Yeah, I like those two examples because it strikes me as like the Facebook example is you're not helpful when if you're lost in yourself or your ego is really taking over that conversation. So if a coworker or a friend or somebody or an employee is coming to you and you take a step back and go like, "Oh, it's a good thing you came to me. That's really great. Let me help you out. This is really gonna, here's what you should do." Or they feed your story and just kind of lean into you. And for the dopamine hit, I read a paper about that. I don't know why I read the paper, but I did. It was a paper about it that said like, why do people jump in on social media and say like, yeah, you should quit that job? It's because they literally get a dopamine hit because you feel like you're connecting with somebody. It's like cheap community is what I think of it. Like we need community. We talk about that as a basic human need. We need community with other people, but it's cheap community. It's shallow. It's like, yeah, I'm just jumping in with whatever you say because that's supportive. If you're doing that, you're not in a position to help the other person, right? You're not in a position to help the other person. And then I like the Dr. Laura example because in that example, a lot of times when we complain or we have an issue, we like to talk about other people, right? Which we talk a lot about in terms of like alignment and empowerment. You know, if I'm an employee, I'm going to complain about my job. I'm going to complain about my boss. I'm going to complain about my coworkers. If I'm an employer, I'm going to complain about my employees. I'm going to complain about everybody else. The truth is what we've found over and over again is if you're trying to resolve a situation, that's just not helpful. It's okay to complain a little bit and just vent, get some pressure off. Like that's different. You're coming home, you had a bad day at work, you're telling your spouse, significant other, whatever, that, hey, I had a bad day, this person's kind of a jerk to me, whatever. Like that's the thing. But if you dwell in that and you start to focus on changing other people, what you're really doing is you're disempowering yourself because it's not something that you can change. You're playing a role. I'm going to use the word like you're kind of playing the role of a victim of saying like I've lost all my power. I've got this job on the outside and it's really, really, I'm struggling with it, right? You really have to, when external situations hit us, it's easy to blame the world. The world's not doing this. The world's not offering me a job. The world's not offering me a promotion. The world's not doing this. But you can't change the world. You can only change yourself, which is I like that Dr. Laura explanation. So I do think like at work as a manager, if you want people to come to you, or if you're as a coworker and you want to help people solve their problems or help them to do that thing, I think you have to get into the right mindset of that, right? It's so what is helpful? What's more helpful than versus not helpful?
I love that phrase of helpful help. A long, long, long time ago, I remember I was a super little kid. Someone in our church had a really big hard life thing happen. And so months later, when, all the casserole lines stopped for this family, my dad gave the call, and that's the exact phrase he would use. Hey, and his ask to them was simply, what is helpful help for you right now? There's a lot of ways people can help, but what is helpful help? And I think, Don, to your point is so good. I think why leadership is important, not just when it gets bad, before the therapy need feels like that's what you're doing in the workplace, but when things are good too. And I think that's why both are how we approach wins and praises as a team, and when it hits the fan and it feels like a failure is so important because how you respond to both really, I think, speaks to how you look at your people and the team around you. And a big ego when wins are happening claims a lot of credit for that. And when losses happen, blames somebody else. Of course, of course. And you can't be responsible for the wins and not responsible for the losses. And so a part of helpful help, to your point of stories, I think is also helping realize, okay, what is good or what is right. It can be really easy to get lost in all the negatives as well. And I think across the board, what we've heard from a lot of folks in 2025 is a hard year. And so a lot of teams have said when we've done surveys, Gallup shows national polls as well, the two things employees across the country are asking for is specifically, what is our purpose? Like, I want to know how my daily work impacts our goals. And second, I want to be recognized or praised. And that might look very different in different settings, but people are hungry for that. My unofficial poll in my neighborhood, I saw Christmas trees go up like the day after Halloween, which is like, and it wasn't just one, all across my street, all in neighborhoods that I walk and bike in. And I think that it's just a little bit, people are looking for some literal lights and all this too, right? So I think just the season that we're talking about this is so crucial and important because your people need that, both on the praise wins and the failure mistakes.
Yeah, and those are great. And you pointed to two really key, like Gallup research kind of questions, right? And both of those questions are about the person themselves. It's like the person themselves who needs help. who needs to make a change, or maybe they don't even know that they need help, right? That needs to make a change. It's why they have to own it because that's fundamentally how we work as humans. Like somebody else can't change it for them. They have to own it. They have to be, it's about them. If you come in to help somebody, and you're making it about you, look at this great help I'm giving you. And I like the help. I love every time you tell a story about your dad. What a great guy. You and he's I'm sure he'd be proud of you right now, Philip too. But he that how what is helpful help is such a humble question to ask because you'll see people try to jump in and try to help in ways that really are just helping themselves, not helping the other person. Like really humble help means like I'm not the hero in this story coming in and rushing and saving you, which we tend to think about in our own heads. It really is like I'm going to take the side role and just do a little nudge or just help in a quiet way or do something small or just little things. I remember like when a really good friend of mine, Rob, who's if he's listening, Rob, I'm giving you a shout out right now. Like when I went through, a divorce last year, he's like, "What can I help you get? It looks like you need some help moving. Can I just come around?" And he would just come and just listen and just kind of pay attention. And he would zero in on the things like listening to me, what I needed help on, not coming in and saying, here's what you should do. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. It was just very much you come in kind of soft and you come in quiet, and then it's like, okay, I'm listening for you, and like this sounds like this would be helpful. And he came and helped me to move. Or our whole team did. You did that, Philip. You came and helped me, and I think you guys were hearing me and going like, he's gonna have to move his whole house, and he doesn't have that many people that help him do that. So let's go help him to do that. That's really helpful in those moments. And it wasn't this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take over. It was allowing the other person to win, which is hard to do as humans because that's the paradox. Is we know that it's about ourselves. And then in the moment where you can help somebody else is when you kind of overcome that. Like you use your higher self to overcome that.
Well, and you just mentioned a paradox, and I think it would be amiss if we don't talk about how there is a business case for this. Can we talk about what organizations need versus what people need and how those things connect?
Yeah, yeah. The idea is, for a long time, businesses have been fighting people, and people have been fighting businesses, right? It's like I need something from you, you need something from me, and there's a they thing that's popped up. But when you look at what like both sides need, and when you study it, what do people need? Well, they need purpose. Okay, they need to have that. They need some community. They need to understand like the people around them. They need some autonomy. They need to be able to make choices. They need to be empowered, right? That's what it goes back to that Gallup, those questions that Philip talked about. And they need development as people. Like we need to feel like we're growing. We need to feel like we're growing up. That's what people are really needing. If I take you, listen, if you're listening to this right now and I put you in a job where you have a great purpose, you feel like you're doing it with some great people around you, you have a manager that's challenging you, but then at the same time, you get to make decisions that impact the ultimate outcome, that is a great job. That's a great job for everything that's laid out. That's fundamentally as humans, it doesn't matter what that is. If I check those boxes off, you're gonna love that job. Now, think about it from an organizational side. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't care if people are happy. Look, maybe that's fine. You don't have to care if people are happy. What does the business need? What does the organization need? The organization needs a strategy. You need to know what the business does. You need to know on a very basic level, what does it do? You need really good communication. You need information to flow up and down, left and right throughout the organization. That's what you need. You need execution. You need not people feeling good about things. You need them to get the job done and to execute it at a high level. And then you also need management to determine what is working in the organization and what's not to make adjustments, like as the change agents inside the organization. That's what you need. What we've discovered at People Centric is if you overlay those two things across each other, they don't conflict with each other. They actually align really, really well. If you think about purpose and strategy, that's what strategy really is. It's purpose. But if we go too businessy on the strategy side, then we create goals and we don't share them with anybody. And they don't get to see that. And it's not tied to a mission or a vision or values or bigger picture. If we tie those, then you activate the organization and the people at the same time. And that's what being people centric is. That works really well. You're putting the people in the center of the organization saying, it's not about what the organization needs and it's not about what the people needs, it's what they both need. If you think about the communication in the community, those are two things that go together. You don't just have meetings to pass information. If you're asking yourself, hey, this meeting could have just been an email, that's one thing. I get that. But if it's just an email, there's no community, and we need that as people. You need to sit around the room. We need to spend some time in our weekly Monday meetings talking about how we're doing and what happened over the weekend and what we're succeeding in and where we're thriving and where we're struggling because we need that from each other. When you think about execution, you think about autonomy, those things align really, really well together. Like, I need you as people inside this organization to execute at a high level, and I need you to take ownership in that, which is part of the autonomy. Those things fit really well together if you think about it. And then the last one, if you think about development and management, if we're training our managers by listening to this podcast or hiring us to do manager training, which we do outstandingly, by the way, then what you're doing is you're training your managers how to develop their people, which is why we're talking about this coaching in the first place. Because really, if you're a leader inside of an organization and you're trying to make the business to perform at a higher level, one of the best things you can do is to support your people because then it helps them to activate. And when your people activate, another word for activate is they engage, right? And you get engagement, the company makes more money, the people are happier, but then everything works better. Your turnover goes down, costs go lower, everything. So, Diana, is that what you wanted me to say? You got me on my soapbox a little bit.
I know. But I think it's important to mention, like, yeah, we're talking about therapy. We're talking about how to be good to each other at work. We're talking about how to, be that good emotional support for humans. But I think it's also important to recognize that, like, yes, humans need this, but business needs it too.
I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it made us a better business when you guys helped me to move. Like that made us better because there was a community and communication that builds trust. There's a lot of teams that come and say, how do we build trust amongst each other? You help each other. You help each other. And therapy is a way to do that, whether that's you're just as a friend, as a coworker, right? You don't have to get into, well, tell me about your mom. Tell me, dig deep. Like I think it's probably a good time to talk a little bit about therapy and why are there professional therapists? Well, professional therapists can go deep and go backwards and talk about things that are triggering and difficult to talk about for people, right? That's a safe space for that. As a coworker and definitely as a boss, you definitely don't want to drive the conversation there. Like if the other person drives it there, you can help, but I would also refer and kick outside. And by the way, like a really easy thing is if you own a business or you're a manager in a business, like you should offer resources to your employees. Like larger companies have EAP programs, employee assistance programs. Those are really good, valuable resources for people. Like we're a little too small to have a program like that. So we have a therapist that comes and visits our team every once in a while, and then our team has access to that therapist when they need to go talk to them just to give people help with mental health. We don't do that because people demand it. We don't do that even because we're altruistic and we just love our people so much and we want to help them. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but we do it a lot because it's good business. It really helps us to be more profitable. It helps people to get over their mental stuff and help them to produce better at work. That's a win-win scenario. We don't have to figure out why do you do it? Do you do it for the business or do you do it for the personal? You do it for both. That's people centric.
One of the things I was going to add to that, Diana, to your point, I had a coaching today where a leader was talking about a team member who had made some efforts. Some work had been done this year where they started owning some things, but the last month they've really backslid in a lot of ways. It's led to disengagement. That's literally the word that this leader was using, and literally at least $80,000 of mistakes made just this last month with both decisions, inventory, just not being in it as much. And literally the leader was describing this person saying they're just not in it. And I said, we're talking about engagement. And Don, to your point, like, well, are they using their influence? All of their, all the systems combined, both as a person and in an organization. I think engagement is just influence in workplace that you're a part of. And so finding that in a therapist, one of those notes I was going to add when you're thinking of fit, my best advice to people who are ever looking for a full-on therapist is to look for fit. You should interview your therapist because they're still a person. And so whatever your outcome is that you're looking for, you can email them, you can interview them. When I found my very first therapist, I had reached out to 7 different people. Only 3 responded via email. Only 1 used full sentences and actually capitalized their words. And that was the one that was also referred by a friend. So when I went, one of the things I loved about this person, it was like a little bit of a get to know you. I still paid for the first session. I think in hindsight, I could have said, I just want 15 unpaid minutes with you, but she was in high demand. So she laid it out really clear. Hey, what do you need? What are you looking for? And then she ended, well, I will actually fire my clients if they're not owning it. I'm not here just to listen. Like, we're here to make a difference. And if that's not what you want, that's fine. But that's not how we work here. And I was like, that's literally what I want. I was going to fire you if you didn't do that. So that's like one thing when looking for a therapist. And I think that's something actually really helpful for people to think about. You should be interviewing your therapists or your partners, whoever that is that you're working with, to help move things forward. Find the person you want. Not all therapists are created equal. Not all consultants are created equal. So just a couple of things that can help you as you start to look at opportunities and options around you. And that's one thing I think I've seen. We have many team members who, if they have someone struggling, they might not know how to bridge that gap, either because they haven't been to therapy themselves, or when they see a team member is really struggling in an area, they empathize, but then it's awkward. They don't know what to say next. And so sometimes you can just say, hey, that sucks. It's really hard. I hope you are looking for resources that can help. And maybe this is beyond me, but are you using our benefits program? Are you looking into options? If you have any additional needs or support to plug you into areas that can help, we want to do that for you. We've met people who might sound cold in how they've come across because they might say, in response to someone sharing something really hard that they're going through, that it's definitely personal, and they want to make sure they honor their role and position as a leader. They might say something like, wow, okay, well, I would like to refer you to your HR resources and make sure you have, use your benefits. And that could come across as cold because it may not be sounding like you're feeling their need and acknowledging it. And so just acknowledging as a leader, it could be difficult if you don't know where to go. But be a little human, acknowledge the hard, and have it in your back pocket. Know what your resources are as a company, how to direct people there. If you have personal experience of benefiting from therapy and you're vulnerable enough to share that, great. If you haven't had that experience, at least talk to the value of knowing other people and using the resources in front of you to support your team.
Yeah, and a little empathy goes a long way in that. Like, first of all, let me just say, I'm sorry that you're going through that. I'm sorry that you're struggling with that problem. And be careful about, leaning in too hard on all of that. So, yeah, I mean, I hope we've made the business case for therapy today. I think that's what our goal was for all of this. First of all, I mean, look, we want to normalize therapy. I talk about it. I talk about it on the stage. Therapy's helped me a lot. I think that mental health is a real challenge. I know a lot of people who have gone through a lot of stuff and not gone through therapy, and it would help them a lot. And so we wanted to talk about that and put that out there. But also, we thought those of you who are in organizations who are trying to just work better with people, because we need each other. We need each other in the moments, and how we need each other and how we show up makes a big difference. If you're a coworker and you're going to be the hero in the situation, you're always going to solve everybody else's problems and you take great pride in that. I'm going to tell you something. You might not be helping people. You might just be helping yourself feel good. That might not be what the help is that they need. Really good help, the really good therapists are the ones that kind of sit back and they ask really smart questions, and then they let the other person be the winner. You let the other person be the star in the show. And I think that's one of the things that's a secret to how we do our consulting is when a team has a win, we give them the credit. We don't say, hey, good, you've installed this system and now that system did it for you. Or you did that, you hired People Centric and now you're People Centric. And so People Centric gets the win. We celebrate that stuff internally, but we let our team celebrate that, because really, if it's People Centric, then it's about the people, which is about the you piece. And that's kind of a cool way to think about it. So hope this episode was helpful for you. Hope you saw it as your own therapy session. And so just sit back and tell us about your parents. Tell us about your parents. We'll just sit here and listen. You can just listen. We're gonna just put some silence and we'll just keep saying, uh-huh, uh-huh, interesting. How does that make you feel? What's going on next? What's next? But yeah, reach out. If you need a business therapist, reach out to us. We can help you with some of that stuff. But if you need a real therapist, reach out. And if you're struggling with anything, talk to somebody. Just talk to somebody, start there and get some help. There's lots of places. You're not alone. So thanks for joining us on the People Centric Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.